And now it's the other three fellows' turn to provide a counter argument or pointing out the deficiencies of Peterson's argumentation for natural law. And so we'll get into it from here. And we're going to start with the virtue ethics response, which is Brad Kallenberg, his undertaking. And he's very magnanimous at the start here and says there's much to be commended in Claire Brown Peterson's chapter on natural law. One strength of her account is the way it easily overcomes the so-called naturalist fallacy. And I thought this was a pretty impressive for him to point out, because I don't think she points it out just as much in her undertaking. And this will, once we kind of introduce this, this is a big thing within scope of natural law, of ethics, and so here,
this is a generally seen as a problem for natural law ethics.
Yep.
This issue of how does nature give us value in and of itself, kind of thing, right?
Right. So naturalist fallacy was the name given to David Hume's complaint that there is no legitimate way to move from fact to value, from is to an ought. So something is a tree, but what ought that tree to do? You are a person, but what ought you do? It doesn't seem like you can just point back to personhood or you and say, this is what I must do, or what he must do, or what the tree must do. So from description to prescription is the issue at hand here. But as Philippia Foote and Alistair McIntyre and others have shown, Kallenberg talks about, the language of ought is already bound up with the description of what a thing is for. Its aim, its intent, or its purpose, its telos. And telos is kind of the end point of it. What is the thing that it, in order to have a complete life, to do the thing that it must, what is the thing that we should point our life towards? So, you miss 100% of the shots you don't miss, which is either, Michael Jordan or Michael Scott, depending on who you're quoting. And so you're aiming the arrow at the target. What is the bullseye for the tree, humanity, the clock, whatever it might be? So Kallenberg points out that if the telos, the endpoint of a clock, is timekeeping, the thing it must do is to keep time, then it ought to keep time well. Why? Because that is what it is for. The clock is there to provide accurate time. If it doesn't, it's not a good clock, and you would replace it with something that is better. So you're ultimately trying to find the best timekeeping piece, and that is a clock that keeps time well. And Peterson argues that both what sort of animal Homo sapiens is and the various social roles we occupy are sources from which we can begin to make out the human telos and thus our moral obligations. So he thinks that she's kind of done it with the natural law, and he probably will tack on a few more points that points it into the virtue ethics camp. But this seems like a big thing for the Christian ethicists.
Yeah, I'm not sure she has, right? He seems to think she has. I'm not real sure she has. Again, we might, there's an assumption, right, that's kind of built in when you say that, something has a purpose. I mean, I think it takes a person to give something purpose. It's a clock works, right? Because we have built it and we've created it for a purpose. But a tree, I mean, So I'm not sure exactly if she's done it, but he seems to think so. We'll look at the other couple guys here as we go here, but let's move on. His other commendation for Peterson is for her attention to specifically religious sources for learning the human telos. He says the book of scripture as well as the book of nature. And so he says that Peterson is clear that scripture does not mandate one particular theory of ethics. And thus, while it is true that following the natural law is good for us, so is obeying the divine command, developing virtue, and writing social justice. So he's suggesting here that her approach can take in all of these various theories of ethics. And so he says in this basically affirmative spirit, he wants to offer just some suggestions more than criticisms regarding ways in which her model could be strengthened. So he's saying, I'm not really criticizing her. I like her approach is what he's suggesting here. And he wants to offer some suggestions on how to make it better. So that's what he's going to attempt to do here in this article.
Which, I want him to come out and say why the virtue ethics then offers the better answer. But offering these suggestions of strengthening a position is fine if you're also a natural laws. But all right.
So I think what he's going to try to do is weave his virtue ethics into her natural law ethics.
Sure.
And that is what he's going to say strengthens, I think, is what he's going to try to do here.
And so maybe virtue ethics is just a better version of natural lawist. And so that's the point he should be arguing even more.